Hello, biology students. I hope everyone's well. Once again, here we go. We're going to be finishing up Module 15. Remember, I'm doing 15B, or the second half of 15 here. You're going to be on that same sheet we started last time, and we'll be actually filling in the top part of it, right? So we'll start at that with the water processing in plants and things like this. So we're going back a little bit, and then we'll come forward to look at the fascinating botanical world of fruit. Okay, so I also want to talk to you about next week we are going to try to do a Zoom class. Okay, so it won't be for this lecture. It'll be just to get together for a little bit to have some question answer, to see how we're doing with our quizzes and things like this. I'm really trying to figure out the Google Classroom and putting the quiz on there so you can actually take it on there. Was it this class I got that figured out for? I can't remember if it was this one. And then I don't know if I've had anybody respond to that. So we got to try to figure that one out. And then I think I just went ahead and sent the quiz to you, right? Yeah, I think so. Because I got some of y'all sent it back. I think that that Genius Scan is working really nice. Some of you have used that. It looks really great. Better than a photo. And I understand it's free, but you use your phone to do it. All right, so next week then at our regular meeting time, which is 2:30, right? Just for a half hour or so, I'm going to try to just do a little Zoom class. How does that sound to y'all? Then we can, see each other, and if you have any questions, we can talk right then and do that. But like I said, I won't be doing the lecture live. I have too many anxious problems with that about losing the signal and this kind of thing. So I want to go ahead and record that and send that to you. I like the fact that you can pause it when you want to and stuff like that. So let's try still doing that for the lecture, but getting together just to make sure we do have a live component. Okay? All right, so let's get started here on 15B. Still looking at fruit. Look at all that beautiful fruit right there. It is springtime, and in springtime is when we start to see our fruit forming. I don't know if any of you gone outside and looked. We have those wild blackberries out there. What do we call those? Dewberries. At least that's what we call them over here. A couple weeks ago, I noticed the little white blossoms, the little white flowers, and then now I'm starting to see the little fruit developing. So if you've got some of those, it'd be a great time. I think in maybe a couple weeks, you'll be able to go pick those and make a nice dewberry cobbler or something like that. But we have all these different sorts here. Last week we learned about how those were formed, right, with the flower, and then we have the seeds inside. So we're going to be looking this week at the fruit and at the seeds. Okay, but let's go back a little bit here and talk about water processing in plants. It fit better with this lecture because last week we had all that flower stuff to talk about. Okay, so first thing is we know that photosynthesis is production of food. All right, that is very simple. We know that. Y'all probably remember the chemical equation for that. That's always good to know, right, for the rest of your ODA career at least. Writing that down usually gives you a couple of points on a quiz, right? Next, we have something called turgor pressure. So turgor pressure is for supporting the plants. This is what makes plants stand up nice and tall. It also lets you know that your plant has plenty of water. And we know that water is absolutely essential, right, for photosynthesis and for life. That includes us as well. So I'm going to give you a picture of this in just a minute. We're just writing this down. This is your first four things. You'll go ahead and write these down, and then I'll go back and talk about each one of those individually. Next, we have hydrolysis. That is water being added, okay? So water being added to the plant in order for it to have the turgor pressure to stand up and this kind of thing. So hydrolysis just means water being added. All right, transport, the movement of nutrients. We know that the roots are picking up water and taking it up through the xylem, and then the nutrients are traveling down through the phloem, right? We know all that about our vascular tissue. And so we're just looking at the processing here. Transport's a big part of those processes. All right, so those are your four blanks at the beginning there. So this is our turgor pressure. You see here on the right, we have a poor plant that someone has forgotten to water. I had that great little flower plant that I had for y'all. Remember we used the leaves to put the green stuff on the paper and watched our chlorophyll kind of travel up and everything. I tried to keep it alive, and the next thing I know, it was looking like this, right? And I was unable to save it. I feel bad about that, but it got real wilty, and then dried out. So if there's no water left in here, it'll end up being dried out. So you've seen a plant that dies and it's super dry. If you have a plant that's wilty and then you get to it quickly enough, you can water it, and look what will happen. That water will travel right into that central vacuole inside the plant cell and fill it up and give it that strength again, give it that tallness. You've probably seen this, for instance, if you go to the refrigerator and you find your celery and it's kind of wimpy, right? It's kind of bendy. You can take that, put it in a bowl of cold water, and after, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, that celery will be nice and crisp again. That's because that water will travel right into those cells. Here we see our full plant. Vacuole full, nice and tall. Here is our wilty plant. Yeah, it's Mrs. Casper's plants look like that. Okay, so now our next blanks down here. Water absorption depends on the roots. We know that roots are responsible for the absorption of the water. Then it gets transported through the xylem. And water transpiration. Remember, transpiration is through the holes in the leaves, the stomata there, and the water will come out if there's a lot of water in the plant. That actually helps to pull the water through the plant. We've talked about capillary action, where the water will just go up a tube naturally from gravity because water sticks to itself, sticks to the side, that kind of thing. But also there's this little bit of this reaction of the leaves sort of creating a system where the water can actually be pulled up and up and up. That's why some of those tall trees can still have water up at the tippy top, okay? Because the transpiration is actually dropping water out, therefore and pulling up water from behind. Pretty cool. We have something called translocation. That's the process that transports organic substances down through the phloem. Remember, phloem down. What are those organic substances? Namely, glucose, right? That's being made from the photosynthesis in the leaves. Taken down, being stored in various locations, stored in the roots, stored in the underground stems like a potato, stored in the fruits, this kind of thing. And plants use, growth is regulated by hormones. There's still a little bit of mystery on this hormone of plants. They're pretty fascinating, but they have messages, just like we have hormones that send messages to our tissues. Plants have hormones that send messages as well. And it will regulate plant growth. And, you know, plants are growing up, but they're also growing sideways. We saw like our runners last week and things like this. And also, remember how plants will follow the sun? Well, how do they turn toward the sun? Well, we think it's these hormones that is causing this disproportionate growth on one side, pushing those flowers, for instance, toward the sun. Very cool. And think about also plants that grow up, a trellis or something like this. If you have a garden growing right now, lots of people are growing gardens now. One, it's spring, but secondly, we're doing kind of the victory garden thing, right? Where we're in tough times, we're going to see if we can make some of our own food. But if you grow a plant that grows up a trellis, up a pole, then it actually starts to curl around it all on its own. Pretty cool. And we think that hormones are responsible for that. This is showing that water transpiration. Okay, so the water is going through the stomata under the leaves, and the water's lost there or evaporated there, but it causes, I don't like the word suction right there, but pressure I like. It causes it to be pulled up this way, and that, along with capillary action, causes the water to go up like that, which is pretty cool, including very, very tall trees. This is also showing that the xylem right here is, so pulling the water up. It's one way only. There's some minerals that might be in the soil. Talk about healthy soil will help our plant be sort of like vitamins, that kind of thing. And remember, the xylem is dead tissue, right? So remember, it's like straws. We think of it like straws, the water's being pulled up through this straw right there. So you can see these little red dots are supposed to be the minerals being pulled up along with the water right there. Now, phloem is different. It's living tissue for one. You should have drawn some of those a couple weeks ago, like a microscopic view of that, where the xylem just looked like holes. The phloem had all that activity going on in there. And that's because they actually have more stuff going on. So they have water, okay, and food. They're going up, but look, it's two-way flow. It can go up and down depending on where the plant needs water, where it needs minerals, where it needs to store starches and sugars and things like that. So that's why the phloem, you may have wondered, why does the phloem need to be alive and the xylem doesn't? Because the xylem is really just a straw, and the phloem is really regulating what's going on in the plant. And that's part of its regulation is water regulation. Water being so critical to the life of the plant that it needs all of this attention being given to it. These are the hormones I was speaking of. The plant responds to something called auxin. So auxin is a type of hormone. And we'll see here, okay, that there are these processes that are hormonally driven. So one of those processes is, so we're going to be looking in a minute at the 5 plant hormones, but right now we're going to look at the processes that take place because of hormone action. All right, so auxins are a type of hormone, and so I'm going to give you some general things right now, then I'll tell you specifically about auxins. All right, so phototropism is what causes the plant to grow toward the light. So I mentioned earlier about the sunflowers turning toward the sun. Okay, that process is called phototropism. We will see that some of these hormones are responsible for the action of phototropism. We have gravitropism. That's plants growing against gravity. Or, yes, they're growing up against gravity, but it also has to do with the root knowing which way is down. Remember we talked about that, how the root can tell which way is down? That's because of a hormone that gives it that ability to know up from down. Thigmotropism. This is a plant that will grow in response to touch. This is the plant growing up the trellis. So if the stem starts to grow up, it hits the trellis and it feels it, all right? So it touches it. When it touches it, the hormone causes the uneven growth, which causes it to reach around and pull and hold on, if you will, to that trellis, to that stick that it's growing up, right? Part of your porch, right? You've seen plants that grow up your porch. So that's known as thigmotropism. And then etiolation is a little different. We have extreme phototropism, where a plant grows in a dark place. Okay, so that says plant, but it's supposed to say plant. Grows in a dark place, stems get long and spindly without many leaves. So this is typically not a good thing for a plant. We say that it's the plant is leggy, is how we call that. So for instance, if you have a very thick forest of trees, and the trees are creating shade underneath it, then the plants that are in that shade that happen to grow, a lot of times you won't have a whole lot of plants growing down there because there's not enough sunlight reaching it because the trees have taken all of it in the canopy up there. But when the plants start to grow down there, they will really be reaching to find the sun. They're like, where's the sun? And as they reach out, they'll have these long stems reaching before they even put a leaf out to try to find out where that sun is. And so we call those leggy. If you have a plant in the house and it looks like it's very tall but doesn't have a whole lot of leaves or not super green, sometimes they're a little bit yellow, you need to give it more sun. All right, so it's needing more sun. It's looking for the sun. There's a great experiment if you wanted to try where you can put a nice healthy plant in a box and then you cut, so you're going to close the box so the box will be, dark. But if you have a hole at the top of the box, so say you put the plant on the left side of the box, you close it and you put a hole at the top right side of the box, and there's going to be presumably some light coming through that plant will grow in such a way to reach up to that top corner of the box because it'll know the light's coming from there. Pretty fascinating stuff. A great project for the science fair if you ever wanted to do it's a long term, of course, because you got to wait for the plant to grow. So, but it's a great project. Here are our 5 plant hormones you're going to be putting into this chart in your book right here. All right, so auxins are the ones that are affecting plant growth, like we were just talking about. Okay, those different type of tropisms, right? We have the gibberellins, which will affect the stem seeds and mitosis. Remember, mitosis is cell division. So cell division is also going to be driven by a hormonal action taking place. We have cytokinins. They will affect rate of growth in leaves, in cells, and in the synthesis of chlorophyll. We have abscisic acid. This inhibits the abscission layer and controls stomata. So abscission layer is the layer where the leaf is connected. And in deciduous trees, for instance, those leaves will fall off at one point. It is a hormone group that will tell that abscission layer to form. Or in this case, abscisic acid will cause it to be inhibited. And then stomata, controlling the opening and closing of stomata. So we think that the water, it does have a lot of effect on that. A lot of water causes those cells to swell and they stay open, right? And the hole stays open. But we also have this hormone that will control the stomata as well. Ethylene is sort of like a gas that's produced. So we're gonna the fruit, for instance, will release this type of a gas, and it'll cause ripening. For instance, if you buy a banana at the store and it's bright yellow, and then you forget about it for a while, what happens? Well, it starts to ripen more and more, right? It turns eventually kind of brown. And so different people like bananas at different, types of ripeness. Some very ripe and almost green, and others, right in the middle. And then some people like it squishy, So I don't know what you like, but this ethylene is what's causing it to do that. You can also use that as an example for avocados. So avocados, if you buy an avocado and it's hard as a rock and you leave it out, it will eventually soften up, right? Well, the ethylene is the chemical that it's releasing, and I call it a gas because if you put, for instance, a really ripe apple next to a not as ripe apple, the ethylene from the really ripe apple will actually affect the not as ripe apple, and that's why they say one bad apple, affects the whole bunch, because if you have one that's rotting, it releases that ethylene, kind of like a gas, and it will cause the other ones to ripen even more quickly, and therefore you can have one bad apple rotting the rest of them. Yeah, kind of cool, right? Okay, these are the auxins, the plant growth. So this is the turning toward the thigmotropism, the phototropism, all that kind of thing right here. So this is what we think is happening. What I said to you was that it causes that growth to be, proportionally changed. So we have our regular old sunlight's overhead. Here's all of our molecules right here, our auxins that are right here. That's what those IAA molecules are. And they're right there at the top growing up. Okay, so the sunlight starts to shine on one side of it. Look what happens. That the molecules now, the growing molecules, the auxins, will move to the far side where the sun isn't. And because the cells are there that cause the growth, they will grow more. And when they grow more, that causes this to tilt over that way. You see that? And so that's what we think is happening. There's still a lot of work needing to be done on this plant hormone stuff, because it is a little bit mysterious even to this day. Gibberellins, okay, so these are the ones that will induce the fruit enlargement right here. So you can see that we have some grapes here that aren't as large, and we have some bigger ones here. So this is one of we actually can manipulate this. You go into the grocery store and you see wimpy grapes and you see big, fat grapes. Chances are we're going to buy these guys right here. Well, one of the ways we have been able to transform the kind of smaller grapes is to apply some more of the gibberellins to them, and that will cause them to grow bigger. You may think that that's a manipulation that's not good, but keep in mind that the gibberellins are natural for plants. So that's okay. It's not like we're putting an unnatural chemical on there. I used to think that they have those grapes that taste like cotton candy or whatever, and I thought, oh my goodness, it's like frankenfood, right? We've really manipulated. Truthfully, we haven't. It's the natural part of the plant that they've sort of enhanced a little bit, and it causes it to have that flavor, for instance. And it turns out they're actually pretty good for you. And furthermore, apparently grapes are good for you, even though there's lots of sugar in them. That's why we like them, yeah. They've got all sorts of nutrients that are good for us, it turns out. That abscisic acid I was telling you about, we can see it helps with seed dormancy, which will inhibit germination. That makes sense, right? If it's dormant, then it's not going to germinate. And then the dormancy can be broken when gibberellins or other mechanisms like temperature, light, water will cause something to be ready to go. All right, so once again, we have this hormonal action that is going to even deal with germinating seeds. Okay, so we see once again, so lots of involvement of hormones here. Ethylene action, I was telling you about bananas. We start with our green banana, right? And it eventually turns into our darker banana. What is that saying up top there? Okay, so it's kind of giving off that ethylene right there. All right, all this different, and it's causing that fruit to be to ripen. Tomatoes are another good example know that our green tomato, even if we buy a green tomato, it will ripen and turn red, presuming it's a red tomato. But in my opinion, letting it ripen on the vine makes for a more flavorful tomato. I don't know if you agree with me on that. One more hormone question mark. Botanists are studying a hormone they think might be there. Like I told you, the hormone study of plants is still really, really mysterious still to this day. So we think there's one that they're kind of calling Florigen at this point, talking about the flowering. So think about the flowers. The flower is growing, then the flower is opening and blossoming. So we're thinking all of that's got to be hormonal in some way. Could it just be auxins, more types of auxins, or is there a special kind of hormone there, that we're now calling Florigen? It's been a while since I set up this lecture, so it's possible we've had a lot more growth on this, the knowledge of this than I know about, so it might be fun to look that one up. Okay, now we're going to take a look at seeds real quick. All right, hold on. Okay, so the seeds we'll be looking at today, I'm actually in part of our lab, we'll be taking a look at some seeds right here. We will see how these seeds are, of course, going to be different for our dicots right here. We talked about that before, right? The 2 cotyledons, and then our monocots, the single cotyledon right in here. That's our corn seed right there. All right, so here we go. And I want to get into the details right here about what this is for. Remember I'm pretty sure last time we talked about, yes, that this part right here is the food part for the plant. But look right up here. We have this little plumule called the epicotyl right here. Plumule is what a lot of people call it. And then we have the little rootlet right here. This is going to form the root. This is going to form the leaves. And remember what the endosperm is doing right here. It's serving as the yolk or whatever the food for the plant. Same here. Our endosperm is serving as the food for our single cotyledon right here. This is going to come up with 1 leaf. This is going to come up with the 2 leaves right here. I don't know why it's showing on both sides there. Okay, so it contains the embryo and either endosperm or cotyledons. That's because this endosperm is the cotyledon actually took over on the dicot. Yeah. And then we have our endosperm cotyledon providing nutrition right there. So this is what a seed looks like. I'm not sure if you're supposed to draw this. I think I wanted you to draw this somewhere. I just don't know if you have any room anywhere to draw your seed. When we get to the lab, I'll show you. We would have been looking at this, you see, ourselves with a magnifying glass, with the dissecting scope, things like this. All right, so you can see our cotyledon, which is going to be same as our endosperm. It's a technical thing here, how that developed into a cotyledon. Our plumule, you see our 2 leaves right there. Here's our rootlet right here. And then the scar, that's where it came from the parent. The testa is the seed coat. Most seeds have a coat. Mostly that's to keep them dry when they're not being used. Once they get wet, we'll see in the lab time, they will swell up and break off. Oh, okay. So then we have our germination. Put our seed down into the ground. It gets wet enough, it's warm enough. It sends down the little rootlet, also known as a radicle. Sends that down. No, it knows where down is, right? It knows where down is. And then the testa is going to split open. The seed coat will open up. And then we're going to see pointing up here is going to be the beginning of our cotyledon forming our leaves. So it pushes up through here. All of this is hormonally driven, right? And then this one's going to push up. There's our 2 leaves for our dicotyledon. Here's the food source. Now, does the plant need this anymore? No, because now it's got sunshine to make its own food. So this right here, the cotyledons, they'll just break off and they'll fall off, right? And then we have our true leaves coming up here and new leaves developing. And we can see our plant growth. Let's watch a little video on this, kind of a time-lapse deal. Oops. Not there. Sorry about that. I'll see if I'm about adding it. Let's go back here. All right, hold on. Okay, let's see if this works. All right. This should be a time lapse of germinating seeds. Okay. So they're in a bag, sitting in the sun. Okay, you see a root coming out there. There's some roots going down. Notice they know which way is down. Okay, and now that's a weed coming up there on the left. not one of these beans. But over here you can see a bean reaching up. Here it is. There's a cotyledon coming up right there. Yeah, they're reaching up. Look at that. Stem's going to go up. Oh, yeah, there. And there's the true leaves. See the true leaves? And they kind of go out of view right there. All right, so there we go. So you can see all that movement right there. It's all that hormonal stuff, right? Knowing which way's up and down. There's water, right? They know which way the sun is. Look at that. I think that's pretty cool. That root knew which way was down. It's reaching down. It's moving around other roots. That's that thigmotropism. Yeah, very cool. All right. Good. Okay, I'm glad I got that. Okay. Now we're going to get into the kind of the botanical definition of what fruits are. All right. They can develop in different ways, okay? So they can develop from one ovary or from many ovaries depending on the flower. So they can be simple or compound, and then they can be aggregate or multiple. All right? So these are all none of this is in your lab book to write down. I don't think. Yeah. So, so this is just interesting information about fruit. Okay, I'm fascinated with it, so I'm going to teach it to you. All right, so if we have a simple fruit, it's going to develop right here from our one ovary, right here. If we have aggregate, notice we have multiple growing like this, and multiple. So aggregate together, multiple separate, but yet together right here. Okay, so we're going to see the different kinds. Do you start to see anything? Does it recognize as a fruit? You know, maybe one of these might be an apple or something like that. Let's see. All right, this is my little schematic of fruit types, okay? If we have a simple fruit that's developing from a single ovary, all right, they can be fleshy, and those are divided into the three groups called the pome, right here, the drupe, and a berry. You've heard of a berry, okay? We're going to look at each one of these, and you might be surprised how the fruits fit into these categories right here. We have also simple fruit from a single ovary. We have the dry type. Those can form a capsule, a pod, something known as a samara, and of course a nut, which you should be familiar with in kind of nuts. Then we have compound fruits. These are the ones that develop from many ovaries. Either they're aggregate from the same flower, which that previous picture showed you, or multiple, which is several flowers. So we're going to see the fruits and where they fall in these botanical distinctions right now. Here is an aggregate fruit, a compound fruit. These are fruits that develop from several ovaries on the same flower. All right, we're looking here at a strawberry, and strawberries are wonderful, right? Delicious. Now, something you might notice that's unusual about a strawberry is where are the seeds? Typically, we find seeds inside a fruit, but in this particular case, we find the seeds outside the fruit. Pretty cool, huh? Those are all the little seeds right there. These are going to easily be dispersed because the fruit is so delicious and so beautiful that animals will eat these, humans will eat these, yes, and we just eat the seeds with these, and then they will, eventually make their way out, if you know what I mean. All right, so these are aggregate fruits. Here you can see each one of those. That is so fun. Look at that. Each one of those is an individual pistil. And it has to be pollinated on each one of those right here. And each individual pistil will develop into that actual seed. Okay? So the seed is a berry. Interesting, huh? The seed is a berry. The strawberry, however, is not a berry. The strawberry is an aggregate fruit. A compound fruit, one of my favorites. We have a collection of ovaries from the different flowers. I'm going to show you a pineapple at the end in our lab right here. You can see each one of those little things. When you're cutting up a pineapple, you cut off this very, very hard outer part right here, or you certainly don't eat it. But I want you to see that each one of those little things coming out there is going to be an individual flower. All right, so these are collections of individual flowers. This particular pineapple is going to flower, which means that the whoever's growing it isn't going to eat that one. They're going to let it go to flower. And why would I let one of my fruits go to flower? I'm not going to eat them. What I'm going to do is when they go to flower, I can then collect the seeds from them. Okay, so a farmer will obviously let some of his plants go to fruit and sell those as fruit, but some of them he'll let go to flower so that he can have seeds for the next season. Yeah. All right, the fleshies are called the pomme. Now, I don't know if any of you know French, but the French word for apple is pomme. All right, so that is they're using the botanical distinction right there to say apple. So a pomme is where the fleshy portion forms from it's called a receptacle. The ovary forms a leather core with the seeds inside. Okay, so the ovary is in the core right here. Okay, and it forms this fleshy portion right here, the hypanthium, which is of course sweet, which is what we like to eat, and then we typically will spit this part out, get rid of this part, and guess what those seeds will do? They will grow into a new plant. Remember, this is the strategy of the plant to send its seeds out, and it does that by using this delicious sweet fruit to do it. All right. All right, this one's called the Gala apple right there. Also a pomme is this one, the pear. The pear is considered a pomme. So think about a pear and how it's similar to an apple, right? So it's got that middle part, that the core, we call it, right there with the seeds hidden in there. And there's even sort of that round part here that's got little hard parts in it that we spit that part out. Now the flesh, of course, is different tasting from an apple flesh, which is distinctive between a pear and an apple. But they're both in the same group of fleshy fruits. Then come our drupes. Our other fleshy fruit are our drupes. These can get a little bit botanically complex, but they're pretty amazing. All right. When the outer fleshy part surrounds the shell, which is a pit or a stone, and it is hardened around the kernel, which is the seed. So inside of a peach, we're looking at a peach right here, that pit that's in there, that's not the seed. The seed's actually inside the pit. Okay, sometimes you may have noticed that if you shake that little middle part right there, you can hear something rattling inside there. And what's rattling in there is the seed. All right, so it's in there. Notice it's got that fleshy fruit part out here, which is sweet, delicious, beautiful, which will allow that seed then to be dispersed, right, which is the goal of the plant. These develop from a single carpel. These are known as a stone fruit. They have a stone or a pit derived from the ovary of the wall of the flower. Okay, so that's what makes it a drupe. Here are some other, well, this is a peach right here. So this is just showing the actual picture of it and the parts. So the exocarp is the skin. Sometimes we throw that away, right? The endocarp is the pit, and inside the pit is the seed. All right, and then we have the mesocarp, which is the part that we eat. All right. What is a drupe? So here are some examples of drupes. Some of these might surprise you. All right, look, an almond, really? So that's the covering and the seeds on the inside. We eat the inside, we eat the seed of an almond. Not sure what the almond fruit looks like. A pistachio nut, how about that? Not a nut. It's a drupe. Cherries are a drupe. Nectarines and peaches, those make sense to me. I never would have guessed coffee beans to be a drupe. Coconut, dates, apricots, fleshy fruit with the thin skin and a central stone containing the seed. All right, so the seed, this is the stone, I believe, of the coconut. You know, the coconut has a big green kind of fruit part on the outside that we don't eat, and then this is the stone on the inside with the seeds in there. Okay, so those are some drupes. All right, we get to the berries. Sometimes students get kind of surprised at how many things can be berries, okay? It's a botanical definition, keep that in mind. It's a fleshy fruit produced from a single ovary. It's the most common type of fleshy fruit. The entire ovary wall ripens into an edible pericarp, usually. They may have one or more carpels with a thin covering and fleshy interiors. The seeds are usually embedded in the flesh of the ovary. So this is a pomegranate, right? So the pomegranate is apparently a berry. Each one of those separate ones right there are considered the berries. They have a special, obviously, container that's being held right there. Those usually grow from a type of a tree. So here are some different berries right here. So some of these we might have guessed. Okay, so I don't know, a grape is a berry. We probably would have guessed that one right here. This is a tomato. How about that? A tomato is botanically not only a fruit, but a berry. You think those are plums? I think a plum would be a drupe, so I don't think that's a plum. That's something else right there. Not sure exactly. This is a berry, my favorite berry. You may have been surprised at this one, that an avocado turns out to be a berry type of a fruit. Interesting. A banana is considered, now remember this is a botanical definition right here, but a banana is considered a berry. All right, it has to do with the way it develops in its flower. Okay, definitely fleshy. Oh, here's a berry. Yeah, the watermelon, also a berry. This is showing you how the banana grows. Now, this is a banana tree, and the banana tree is interesting because it is a monocot. It's like an overgrown grass, if you will. I don't know if you can see any of those leaves there, but they do have parallel veins on them. These are the little bananas growing right here. See each one of those, that's the flower part right here. Here's going to become the banana right down here. All right, so there's the pistil, right, coming up, carpel coming up right there. One thing that's interesting about the bananas, there's a closer up picture right there. Here's going to become the banana right here, and here's the flower, right? So remember, the idea here is that the flower would be pollinated. Now, commercially speaking, banana farmers do not let the banana become pollinated. Interesting, huh? And that's because if it were pollinated, think about a banana. On the inside of a banana, you cut it open, you see all those little black teeny tiny seeds in there? So those are the seeds. They're inside there. If it had been pollinated, each one of those seeds would get rather large. So think about it when you're eating a watermelon with a lot of seeds in it. You have to eat and you have to spit out those seeds, right? Can you imagine your banana having seeds at least that large in there, where you're eating the banana and having to spit out those seeds? So it turns out that the fruit here will actually develop from that hormonal regulation, right, the ethylene, that they become very sweet on their own without going through pollination. And so they purposefully do not allow these to be pollinated. I find that fascinating. All right, we have a modified berry. This is a quiz here for you. This fruit is fleshy and soft. It comes from a single ovary. All right, so we're still over here in the simple. The ovary wall develops into a thick covering, and they're different from a regular berry because they have multiple seeds. So it's a modified berry called a Hesperidium. All right, so it's got a soft and fleshy interior. It's got a thick covering on the outside. But it's still considered a type of berry. Any guesses? There we go. It's an orange. Weird, huh? Crazy, crazy. The orange is a type of a berry. Bergamot also is in this group right here. So bergamot is an interesting fruit. You may not have heard of it. It's sort of like a lemon. Look at that outer covering right there. Very thick and bumpy right there. Bergamot is used similar to lemons. But I will tell you that it's very, very desired for its oil. The oil that comes from the rind right here. And that oil can be very powerful. Some people use it in, like medical treatments and things like this. I know you can get an essential oil of bergamot. It smells really good. I know that much. All right, we're going to look now. We're going to move over from our fleshy over to our dry. And these are the ones that are going to be found in pods. Okay. So plants that make a pod for their seed are called legumes. So anything with a pod is called a legume. They are dehiscent. Dehiscent is a fancy word to say that they split in the middle. So if you've ever shelled peas, for instance, you break them open in the middle and they break open pretty easily. And so they will break open and you get the peas out, right? So that's called dehiscent. They split to expose and release the seeds. That makes sense. Remember, they're making those seeds for a new plant to be made. So if they get mature enough before we pick them to eat them, of course, they will actually open up on their own and drop those seeds right out of there. They develop from a single simple carpel, because we're still in the simples right here. Nuts. Nuts, you've guessed these already. It's a simple dry fruit. It has one seed. It's actually the seed that we're eating. The ovary wall becomes hard and stony, which makes the shell. They are indehiscent. These do not break open on their own. And you probably know this as well. When you're eating nuts, you have to get a nutcracker to open them, right? You have to find some way. I get a hammer or something to open them up. We're looking at a couple of seeds down here. A couple of nuts down here. We have a pecan and a walnut. They're all really, really good for you. So here's some things, however, that are not nuts, okay, that we've maybe traditionally thought of as nuts. So we already know about the almond, right? What is it? Do you remember? It's in the group called the drupe, right? It's a drupe group, all right? Here's another one. This is called a Brazil nut. All right, it's hard to see right there, but the Brazil nut They're interesting. They're big. They're quite large, and they are kind of squeaky when you bite into them. Have you ever had a Brazil nut? Now this is my favorite right here. Okay, so this you can see the palm right here. All right, this is a type of apple, and it has this very interesting part on the bottom right here. Does that look familiar in any way? Right there? Well, it turns out there is what we normally would call a nut developing underneath this apple. This apple is called a cashew apple. A cashew apple. This right down here is a cashew. I would have told you, if you asked me what is your favorite nut, I would have said a cashew and pistachios are my favorite nuts. Well, neither of them are nuts, are they? Right? Neither of them are nuts. The pistachios are drupe, and now we're going to be looking at the cashew as a palm. Interesting. Now, let me tell you something fun about the cashew nut. The cashew nut it's not a nut, right? But it's inside this casing right here. When we send someone out, they grow in tropical locations. In order for this to form completely, you have to let the fruit become completely ripened on the tree. Okay. Whereas if you pick apples a little before they're ripe, they will ripen a little bit due to the ethylene, hormonal action that takes place on there. Well, but to have this cashew develop, the apple has to be completely ripe. All right. So then they'll pick this whole thing. They'll take this part off, and to get the cashew out of there, there is inside here a type of acid around it. So if you open it up with your bare hands, that acid will actually burn your hands. Yeah, I mean, maybe not like burning right away like a flame, but after a while you'll feel this burning on your skin, a chemical type of a burn. So the people that are picking these in these tropical locations have to be very careful to get that nut out of there, that cashew out of there. They have to use gloves and things like that to get it out. Then they process it, and we end up having our delicious cashews. Now, what do they do with the cashew apple, you might be wondering? They eat it because it's delicious. Now, why don't we have any cashew apples here? Well, because since they had to let it get completely ripened, then it can't be shipped anywhere. They're in a tropical location. By the time they put it in a box and shipped it to California or shipped it to America, the apple would be rotten by that time. So only the local people are benefiting from that delicious cashew apple. I will tell you this. One time I did find cashew apple juice at the grocery store, and I bought it for my biology students. We drank it, tasted it, and it tasted like apple juice. Yeah, so very cool. They could make the juice from it, right? Because they can preserve the juice. Once they make it, they can refrigerate it and that kind of thing. So anyway, I find that fascinating right there. These are also not nuts. You may recognize those. Those are called macadamia nuts, right? Macadamia nuts, but they're not actually nuts. Hawaii is famous for growing these there. All right. And we know the pistachio is a drupe already. Yeah. What about the peanut? Did you know the peanut's not a nut? Notice what it's growing in. Have you ever tried to crack open one of these peanuts? It breaks along the line right there, right? Because guess what? It's dehiscent. Because guess what? It's a pod. And a pod, therefore, is a legume, right? Not a nut. Not a nut. All right, our dry ones, these are a little bit different because we don't really eat these as a commercial food. All right, but the dry capsule one is going to develop from 2 or more carpels. It is dehiscent. It will break open on its own. That picture we're looking at right there is a bud from a flower. Well, it's actually the bud from the fruit of the flower. The flower happens to be called the opium flower, and these are the poppy flower, making poppy seeds. Here come the poppy seeds, and then when it's at this stage right here, a sap will come out of it, and that's where the illegal drug of opium comes from. All right, the dry samara. This is the type of fruit. It has a flattened wing kind of part to it. You think of this as some of the seeds coming off of a tree. They have a papery tissue right here. You can see that papery tissue right here. What is that for? All right, this comes from a maple tree. There is the pericarp. What's in there? The seed. And why does it have this little thing right here? This is going to act like a little wing that when it falls off the tree, it's going to, like a little helicopter, find its way down, right? And then it can find some soil that's suitable, and it will grow a new plant. All right, it is indehiscent. It's not going to break open, right? Not opening along the seam. And it has something called an achene, which is just the winged part right there, the achene. The shape of it enables it for the wind to carry it farther away. All right. Seedless fruits. So these can be produced using a technique called parthenocarpy. a process without pollination. This is similar to what I told you about with the bananas. Okay, so it also happens, that's what I said right there. Bananas are produced this way. So are other citrus fruits, especially the fruits that don't have any seeds in them. You know, like a seedless orange. You may wonder, well, where is the seed? Well, we have this special way, the parthenocarpy, which is just a manipulation, if you will, not letting them get pollinated and letting them to develop on their own. The cuties are really famous for this right here. Notice the cuties, if you like these. I would have brought some of these for you today, but these are small, right? They don't get too huge, and they don't have seeds in them. And they're very, very, the taste is real, it's just delicious, right? Wonderful taste in there. And so that is because we have been manipulating that. I will say this is not the same thing as manipulating their DNA or anything like that. It's not the Frankenfood I was mentioning earlier. This is just manipulating their botanical development, which to me is perfectly good. They're going to be good to go that way. So they're safe to eat, if you will. All right, so what I would have had for you now for your lab would have been a fruit classification lab. I would have had some fruits out there on the table for you. We'd cut them open, check them out, look at the seeds, this kind of thing. Try to classify them. Where do they belong? Are they a drupe? Are they a berry? How are these that way? But since we're not together, I actually have recorded me doing some of this, so we're going to watch that here in just a minute. And I think there would have been a place on your lab form, in your lab book, to write this down, right? To put these down in your lab manual. Okay. So here are some of the fruits I did get. I would have got a lot more for y'all, but I didn't because, not there. Look, there's my drupe, right? My pomme, my legume. This is a modified berry, right? Our lemon. And then here's our multiple fruit right there, our pineapple. Okay. Here we go. Hey everybody, sorry we're not together in real life, but we're going to try to do this little lab on fruit, okay? So first thing I have, I'm going to show you right down here, is I have some seeds that I sprouted the other day, okay? And what I did was I put them in a bag, and then you can see how they started to sprout. Let's see if I can bring that in. Can you see that? All right. And then I was using this magnifying glass. I don't know if that'll work at all. And you can see how I've got some of these roots and stuff. They came out first. In fact, I pulled one out earlier and took a picture of it. So I'll add these pictures in so you can see them right here. But these sprouted pretty well. Some of my bean seeds just got kind of moldy. Can you see that? Okay. And what's really cool that I hope you'll be able to see on the photo that I put in there, that on the roots you can actually see those little root hairs on there. And remember, those are there to increase the surface area. All right, next I have a seed right here that I soaked in a little Salima bean seed, and I soaked in some water, and it pretty much popped open all on its own. So y'all would be looking at this in class. And what you can see right here is that's the little rootlet right there that would push its way through the seed coat. And then the plumule is right, I don't know if you can see it. I'll probably put another picture in here. Oh, it's actually popping out just a little bit. Do you see right there? Let me try holding on to this and see if this will help at all. Does that help at all? I don't know. Yeah. So I'll put a still photo of this in there. But what I had was a bowl like this, and I put these lima beans in, and you can see after a little while, the seed coat will come right off, right? I can just peel that off. Remember, the testa is what that's called. And then you can pop the thing open, and you can see all that cool stuff right inside there. So a lima bean is nice because it's so big, I tried some black beans, and they were too small. And furthermore, they, for some reason, got all moldy, so I'm not sure why. All right, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull over. Normally what I would have for y'all would be all sorts of yummy fruit. Okay, and, oops, here we go. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and cut this guy open. So pineapples, we learned about these, yes, and it's so cool how each one of these little spots right here would end up being a blossom that came out. Pretty cool, huh? So the reason I don't have a lot of fruit for y'all is because, I expect y'all to eat it. So I'm not going to buy a bunch of fruit and let it go to waste because nobody's eating it since nobody's around, right? Because we're all isolated. So I'm going to show you here, though. I'm going to cut this open. Y'all have probably all done this before. And also remember, if we take this and plant this, right, we could get a little baby pineapple growing up out of there. So someone might want to try that as a project. That'd be pretty cool. Now this one is nice because my family, I have a couple, my son is home from college and everything, and they love fresh pineapple. So we'll be able to eat this one. That'll be good. All right, so it's got a very hard core. Right in the middle there. Ooh, it looks like a good one. Nice and juicy. Okay, so I don't know how y'all do this, but I usually cut it like that, and then I cut this kind of hard part out, although that didn't seem too bad. And then we've got our edible portion in here. So I would be giving this, of course, to y'all. But let's see. That's pretty sweet. That's pretty good. I like it. All right. So I would have had a bunch more fruits for y'all to recognize. But these fruits would be for you to categorize into where they belonged botanically and stuff like that. Okay, gang. See y'all next week. Oh, okay. So there we're at the end of that. I thought I had some more pictures for you. In fact, hold on a second. I'm going to go get some more pictures. Hold on. Okay, these are the pictures I wanted you to look at. So here is a close-up of the seeds that I germinated on a piece of wet paper towel, put into a Ziploc bag. And you can see that these grew really well. These are wheat berry seeds. And you can see they're growing in here. And then I brought there's a magnifying glass on here. I was hoping you could see. They were really very beautiful, these little root hairs coming up right here. Very nice. My chia seeds didn't seem to want to germinate right there, but the wheat seeds did. All right. And this is close up too. I'm hoping you could see these. Now I have this on a blue color here, and then I put them in on the white, so maybe you can see that a little better. So this is my actual seed right here. I took a picture, with my phone camera, so not that great. Anyway, if you had the dissection scope, you could have put those under there and seen those. All right, y'all. So that is it. That is our lab for today. And this is 15B, so we will have a quiz coming next week on this. Now, remember, next week we're going to try to get together, try to do a Zoom class or like that, and I'll discuss that whole quiz thing for you. Okay, everybody, have a great week. Bye.